Welcome to Lead Today with me, Kalina. Let's talk leadership. Yeah, so glad to see you and thanks for making the time. I know there's a lot going on with everything, so it means a lot. And
yeah, you bet.
Yeah, so I mean, for anyone that doesn't know you, would love to just get a couple words intro straight from you to get a sense of, what it is you're working on right now and what you're most focused on.
Sure. And then sorry, I have to just sorry, I just have to know what's happening on my calendar here. Okay, great. And then we're so we were gonna go for about 20 minutes. Is that right?
Yep,
Yeah.
that's the
Okay,
idea.
great.
If that's okay with you.
Okay, awesome. Sure. Yeah. Should I just kick it off?
Yeah. What are you about, Jason Feifer? What are you working on and what's important to you today?
What am I about? Hi, I'm Jason Feifer. I'm the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. I am a book author, podcast host, startup advisor. I wrote Nonstop Optimism Machine in my bio once, and people kept using it, and they were like, that's really sweet. So anyway, that too. And what am I working on? Well, look, I am always trying to figure out how to be most useful to people. And things that really excite me right now are newsletters, LinkedIn, community building, and basically anything that feels like it gets me as close to interacting with the most number of people as possible, because I believe that ultimately what entrepreneurs want is direct connection and engagement and feeling like they can really reach out to and be heard by the people who are going to be most useful to them.
Yeah, nice connection. And so what are those tools are you finding are working best for that direct connection right now?
Oh, it's a little of everything. The newsletter I rebranded recently. I went through a couple different rebrands. At first, many years ago, I called my newsletter the Feifer 5, which was a terrible name. It doesn't mean anything. And then I rebranded it as Build for Tomorrow, which is the name of my book. It was supposed to align with the book. But I started having conversations with very smart newsletter people. And one of the things that they really stressed to me was the importance of being very focused, very, very focused on who you're talking to and what you're delivering to them. And I thought, Build for Tomorrow is way too broad. It's abstract. What I need to do is I need to, in the very name of the newsletter, but then also following that through every part of how I create it, has to be keeping my audience in mind and creating an expectation for what they will get with this. So One Thing Better is the name that I came up with, because then I'm always offering one better way to work and build a career or company you love. And as I thought more about it, I realized the format of the newsletter can really flow from that, where I open it up by saying, today's one thing, and then that one thing better, and then go into a structured but still really human and voicey delivery of how to pay off on that. And after a couple of months of this, I have found that I get these incredibly emotional personal emails from people who have read a thing that I've wrote in this newsletter. They feel like they have direct connection to me. Also, the newsletter has become easier for me to create because I feel like I have a clear understanding of what it's supposed to deliver on. And that level of clarity really excites me. Anyway, if anyone's listening to this and is like, well, maybe I'd like to check that out, you can go to onethingbetter.email. You could just put that in the browser, onethingbetter.email, and you'll get it.
Nice. Yeah. And I'll link to all the important things in the show notes as well. So if anyone's interested, they can go there for sure. Okay. So direct connection and clarity is the biggest thing. And how did that factor into your book and even being an editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur? How does this clarity and focus of mission help you there? Because certainly we're pulled in so many directions, right? And I find that it's tough. It's tough to stay one pointed with things that you're delivering on, and things sort of different projects bleed into each other. And so how do you keep it super clear and the purpose well defined?
It starts by understanding your audience. Like if you don't understand your audience, then you don't know what you're doing or why you're doing it. And the more that you can have clarity on who your audience is and what they need from you, the more that you can start to deliver upon that expectation. I believe that anything that you make should strike the right balance of predictability and surprise. So, if somebody listens to this show, you're establishing some kind of predictability. Every episode is going to be similar in that it is going to serve the audience in a specific, particular way. And so they know the reason I subscribe to this is because it is going to fulfill this thing, generally speaking, or more specifically in my life. The surprise is that they don't know how it's going to do that each time. Who is the person? What are the insights? And this is what you want. You want great predictability and surprise. And of course, if you get the balance wrong, then it's no good. If somebody downloads this and it's actually the Muppet Show, I mean, maybe that's actually a kind of fun surprise, but it's like not what they were looking for, And similarly, when I'm making Entrepreneur Magazine, for example, if suddenly we're talking about politics or some stuff that just people didn't come for, then it's a bad surprise. So the way to build the right predictability and surprise, the way to build the right sets of expectations, and then constantly delivering upon them in ways that feel fresh and original and unexpected, requires a just real deep understanding of and respect for your audience. So that's the thing that I'm always infusing. And before I wrote the book, for example, Build for Tomorrow, I just spent years talking to people, trying to understand their pain points, trying to understand how I could be of use. And once I felt like I had gathered enough material and perspectives and had strung them together in a way that felt coherent and useful, and when I shared those insights, people said, aha, that's really helpful to me. That's when I knew it was time to put that together.
Yeah, makes sense. And so those insights, where do you think they were coming from? One question that came in from people in my audience was asking about failure, and everyone's focused on success and how do you deal with failure? And so I'm curious about if the insights were more generated from successes or failures, and then how you were kind of deciding, okay, what needs to stay and what's most important. So maybe a few questions layered in there, but
Yeah. Well, look, it's funny. I'll tell you an interesting failure that really helped me. So I became the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine in like the fall of 2016. And then I was the boss. And one of the fun things about being the editor of a magazine is that you get to write the editor's letter, which is that page in the very front of the magazine with your face on it. And I knew that I didn't want to do that the way that every other editor does. That is usually just a table of contents in essay form. Like the editor writes some kind of lazy something. I will tell you a dirty secret, which is that a lot of editors don't even write it at all. They just have somebody else write it for them. I have ghostwritten other editors' letters in my life, but I was not going to do that. I wanted to use it as a real column, a real place where I could offer perspective and help people. But I thought, well, what do I know? And how can I be useful? And way back then, 2016, I didn't know the entrepreneurship world the way that I do now. I wasn't a part of it in the way that I am now. And so I was afraid of offering what felt like inauthentic advice. And so I thought, well, why don't I stick with what I know? What I know is media, because I come from media. My career up until then had been all about magazine making. So I thought, well, why don't I do a thing about how to get press for your business? And I wrote that column and people liked it. And then I thought, oh, well, let's keep going with that. So now I'll start talking about like why we selected some of the people that are in the magazine, and that'll create some transparency and it'll help people understand how they can get press themselves. And so that was the next issue. And I got less good feedback. And then I did it a third time. And then I started to get angry feedback. Then people started to email me and they were angry. And the letters were all some version of, all right, big shot guy, all you write about is how to get in your magazine. But what if I don't want to be in your magazine? What if I just want to read your magazine? Stop talking about it like you're some impressive person that everyone has to impress. And, it was funny because I was reading these things and I was like, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to be an impressive person that you're trying to impress. I'm just trying to leverage the insights that I have to be useful to you. And I wrote back to one or two of them to articulate that and see what they said. And they said the same thing, which was, that is a useful subject for a lot of entrepreneurs, how to get press. But the editor's letter in the magazine, when I turned to it, I expect it to be a scene setter. I expect it to offer some kind of big, useful insights that feel foundational, because this is the editor's letter. It's a specific thing. And you're not using it like that. You're using it like a media column, which maybe belongs somewhere else in the magazine. And I thought, they are right. They are right. Like, that was a failure of me understanding not just my audience, but my medium. And so that pushed me outside of my comfort zone to start to really reckon with, who is this audience? How can I serve them, even if it makes me scared?
Yeah, fair. And the iteration too, and continuous feedback, to be willing to say, okay, I'll actually take this in and hear you out and have a discussion with you, back to that direct connection that you talked about focusing on. Yeah. And so maybe it's a bit of a change of pace, but I have to get this in before we go for sure. Build for Tomorrow is the title of your book. And, I'm really curious about how to focus on building for tomorrow when, as humans, I think we're often really bad at predicting tomorrow.
Oh, we're terrible at predicting. Shouldn't even try.
So, I know you go into this obviously in the book, but and so people should absolutely read it. But what would you say when people say, the economy's changing, and I get a lot of people in coaching sessions, the economy's changing, I don't know if I'm going to get laid off, all these unknowns, how am I supposed to prepare? What are some just foundational ways you would say to start looking at that?
Well, look, you do not know what's going to happen tomorrow. You can't predict it. It's not even worth trying. But what you can do is you can utilize today to have more to offer tomorrow. If you start to operate with the assumption the thing that you're doing today will not be the thing that you get to or need to or will do tomorrow, that the ways that things work today are not the ways that they work tomorrow, well, then you start to think differently. You start to push yourself to develop new skills. You might say, I'm at this job, but what are the new roles and responsibilities that I can take on that nobody's asking me to do, but that are available to me? What new skills can I develop that are just available to me because I can do them, because I can go pursue something? The ways in which you think about yourself must change. Think more foundationally about who you are and what you do. For example, I'm not a writer, I'm a communicator, or I'm a storyteller. That unlocks a lot of different new possibilities. If I just thought of myself as a writer, I would belong on that magazine page. The reason that I'm able to talk to you now is because I stopped thinking of myself as a writer and I started to think of myself as a storyteller. And I started to say, well, how are stories useful to people? They're not just useful in a magazine article. I can sit down with an entrepreneur who has a problem and hear them out and then tell a story of someone else who solved that problem, and then draw a line between what that person did and what the entrepreneur needs to do. And now it makes sense to them. That is the work of building for tomorrow, because that is the work of building the reality of change into how you operate today. And don't forget that when change comes to you, you alone are not experiencing change. You are not the only person who is going through some kind of disruption. Everybody else is, which means that everybody else is looking around and thinking, I need some new solution. I need someone to help me. I need something, which means that you actually have the opportunity to step up and be that solution for someone else. That's the opportunity that you have right now. Keep that in or edit it out, whatever, but that's reality. Oh, and it doesn't matter that I close my door, because now my second grader has come on in. Hi, do you want to say hi?
Hey.
Say hi on microphone. Hi,
welcome to the show.
She says, welcome to the show. He can't hear you because of the microphone.
Yeah.
I can actually. Oh, you can? Oh, okay. All right. Well, can you leave me to do this? Thank you. Bye. All right. There you go.
Special guest appearance.
Special guest appearance, which is what often happens when I record podcasts late in the day.
Yeah, well, you're talking about problems and then finding the solutions and offering that up to
Oh yeah.
serve others and give value. And so I'm just curious what problems you're grappling with right now and how you're thinking about solving them. Other than
Well,
kids coming home from school and having to
other than kids
having to
coming home, yeah,
manage
yeah,
that.
seriously. Which is its own thing. Well, look, there's a whole lot of them, right? Part of part of the thing that I'm trying to grapple with for myself is what are the next stages of the thing that I've built. I, for example, take very much to heart the advice that I just gave a second ago about thinking about what are the next sets of opportunities available to you that nobody's asking you to do. You know, as editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, nobody is asking me to write a book. Nobody asked me to build a social following. Nobody asked me to start speaking, build a speaking business. Nobody asked me to be a startup advisor. Nobody asked me to do any of those things. It's not part of the job. Those are things that I've built myself. And now the question that I have is, what do I do with all that stuff? It's disparate, but it's connected, but it's not snapped together in a way that is a coherent business all its own. And what does it take to do that? And so I've started to just have really, really interesting, useful conversations with people who have answers to those questions. And they're giving me advice that is exciting, but also scary, because it's going to mean trying new things and building stuff that I've never built before, and figuring out things like, how do you build and monetize a community? And those are exciting problems to have. I think that we all, when we think about problems, we need to think about not whether or not what we have is perfect, but rather whether or not we are putting ourselves in a position to grapple with better problems. Can we create better problems for ourselves? Is my new problem better than my old problem? And, you know, I would say that I'm excited for this new set of problems. And I get to do this alongside all the other work that I do. I don't have to leave Entrepreneur to do this, but these are just the things that I do on the side that I've built as a little constellation. And now I want to snap together into something more coherent. And that's a business problem. And it's an exciting one. So that's what I'm working on.
Nice. Yeah. And I guess a final little bonus one, but who do you take advice from, or how do you find the people to take advice from? I think now there's a sea of people to listen to and lots of books, lots of podcasts. I mean, how do you discern who's a worthwhile source for this? You know, okay, let's build and monetize a community. How do you decide who to trust to advise you on something of that magnitude?
I listen. I have a lot of conversations with people. And, you know, the funny thing is that people are really happy to tell you about what they're doing. And in hearing what they're doing, I can hear, are they thoughtful about how they make the thing that they make? Are their values aligned with mine? Are they building the kinds of things, and do they have the kinds of skills and insights that I myself would like to have some of, or at least partner with people who have this kind of stuff? And then what I do is, if I find someone who I feel like could be really useful, then I start to explore how to be useful to them first. How can I help them? How can I amplify them? How can I give them advice or make a connection that would be useful? How can I do something? And if that works out, then the next thing I do is I ask for a favor, which is a little of their time to help think through something. And, you know, by that point, if you've heard people and you've evaluated whether or not they're the kind of person that you would align with, and then you provided some value to them without asking for anything, then by the time that you ask for something as simple as a little bit of their time and a little bit of their knowledge, nobody says no by that point.
Yeah. Value first. Definitely. I like the sound of that. Well, hey, I could keep you for much longer, but I do want to be mindful of your time. So I just want to thank you so much for being here. I'll definitely link to your book, of course, Build for Tomorrow. And I know you've got a new podcast. Well, not new, but transitioning a little bit to the new show. So I can link to that too,
It's a
around
little,
help.
right. Help
Yeah.
Wanted. Yeah, a little complicated because it used to be another show, and then we rebranded it. But yes, Help Wanted, which I host with my friend Nicole Lappin. best-selling money expert. And each episode we bring on someone who has a money or a work problem of some kind, and we talk them through it. And in doing so, hopefully we help you too. So yeah, that's Help Wanted. You can find it wherever you get podcasts.
Yeah, which is, again, I think circles so back to everything you're doing with your book, with Entrepreneur, with that podcast, and even Build for Tomorrow, the podcast. I think this idea of direct connection, I mean, that's how I found you. And I found it so inspiring that you were just taking emails that people were pitching you and kind of deconstructing them publicly, anonymously, of course,
Yeah.
for people to learn. That's how I found you. And I thought it was so brilliant and useful that you were diving into specific examples. And so it's brilliant that you're doing that on the show and in your book and everywhere else. So I love how you're approaching entrepreneurship and supporting people really with their individual, specific, nuanced ideas and examples. It's so much more useful than kind of blanket statements, you know? So I love how you're approaching entrepreneurship and delivering value to others. So thank you for
Oh, well, thanks. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot, and it's awesome to hear how you originally found me. And I think you picked up that right thread that everybody is available to everybody, right? Which is to just be value forward and to recognize how something that you have or that you know can be useful to someone else. And sometimes it's even the smallest, littlest things. Like in the case of what you just said, I often will take these emails that I get from people who are trying to pitch me or whatever, and I'll block out the names, and then I'll share the mistakes oftentimes that they make in the service of being useful to others who are trying to do the same thing. And that's just some garbage that shows up in my inbox. I could just delete it, but instead I'm trying to share it, because if the whole point is to be useful to people, then suddenly you discover all sorts of ways to do that. So anyway, thanks so much.
Lovely. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. It really helps the show when you like, review, subscribe, or donate to support the effort to continue producing amazing episodes just like this one. I look forward to seeing you again in another episode very soon, and take good care until then.